What's up, guys? My name is Marcus Heskins, and thank you for joining me. As always, if you're enjoying this content, please go ahead and do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, and I appreciate your support. In today's video, I wanted to take a moment to talk about the new workflow that I'm using for any collaborative process, whether it's songwriting or production, with any other members who are running Studio One. So full disclosure, this involves using Dropbox in this case, but I guess the same could be applied to Google Drive or anything like that. But it's mainly about something that came up recently, which is that I was working with somebody and I said, okay, I'll prepare a Studio One session so you can do some additional overdubs at your place. And he happened to mention to me, okay, that's fine, but I'm pretty limited on space on Dropbox, so how big do you think it will be? Now, depending on the sample rate and bit depth that you work, if you were to upload a whole song, that could be very, very big. So one thing that I will often do is either A, create a simple mix down, but more often than not, it ends up being stems that I will export. And the stems will be used because that's a really great way to kind of render any virtual instruments or plugins that I have that the other person might not have. So let's take a look at the workflow really, really quickly. If we take a look at this song, this is still in pre-production. It's got the initial tracking phase done. I haven't really started mixing it all. I don't even know if there's any plugins at all. Let me have a quick look. Okay, I have VU meter and auto align on the drums and EQ. That's probably just low cuts if I had to guess. So it's been a while since I've brought this up. Okay, so simple mixing, but nothing where I would consider this to be done or anything like that. All of my tracks are laid out where I have all of the different groups that I want. They're sent to a bus. So we have guitars, and then we have all the percussion going to a percussion bus, and we have palmas, which is essentially clapping. We have bass, and then all my drums are going to a drum bus. So I could essentially distill this down to 5 different stems, and that would exactly equal the mix that I'm listening to here. So first step of my process is I want to go to Song, and I want to go to Export Stems, and I'm just going to choose the ones that are relevant. So in this case, I'm always going to choose channels. That'll give me what's available in the console. I want guitars, percussion, palmas, bass, and drums. Okay, file name prefix, totally up to you whether you want to include that. This is the main thing that has changed for me. As opposed to using Wave and keeping things at 24-bit 96K, I opted to give it a shot to try out the Ogg Vorbis. Now there's a couple different things that Studio One can play back. It can deal with FLAC. But Ogg Vorbis ends up giving you a really, really small file size, and it's a lossless compression format, which means that you don't hear that much in terms of any degradation or anything. And it is more than good enough, especially if somebody just needs to have something to track to. So my settings for this, I've kept it at the same sample rate. I chose variable bitrate and quality set to 100%. Export ranges between the loop. Write tempo to audio files and import the track, close after export. Now I've already done this, so I won't go ahead and export that, but here are the resulting files. And I imported these back into my actual song, and you'll see there's a reason for that in a moment. I also created a group, and you can see that I've just called this stems, and these are essentially at unity gain, but if I play back any one of these, let me just solo the guitars, and just turn my click off. There's my percussion, there's my palmas, my bass, and my drums. So these stems represent the whole entire mix. Okay, so that's step 1, making sure that you use the export stems option, bring them back into the session, and Ogg Vorbis as the file format. All right, step 2 is we need to create a new song. Now this is something that I would actually create in a shared Dropbox folder that I've shared with the other producer or the other artist that I'm working with. And obviously this really only comes into play, keeping in mind that they're also working in Studio One. I don't want them to have to do a lot of work, and I've already done a lot of work in terms of setting up arranger tracks, markers, chord track. Everything is set up. If there was any time changes in terms of my time signature or my BPM, that's all intact. So what I want to do is choose song, and we are going to import song data. Now we're going to scroll to the song, which was the one that I was working in a minute ago. Track options we'll talk about in a second, but I want to bring in the tempo and time signature, the marker track, the arranger track, and the chord track. I've already done all this work. I just want to bring this in. Now, when you're bringing in the arranger track and the chord track, because they use actual events, it's very important that you have events selected. And last but not least, I'm just going to bring in all these stems. I gave them one distinct color so that they pop out and they're easy for me to differentiate between everything else. Let's click OK. what's happening now is I've essentially just rebuilt that whole song really, really quickly. Let's unmute all these. These come in exactly as they were in the source song. So here's my arranger track. Let's bring in my marker and my chord track events. Everything that was in my source song is now here as well. Now, what I might do is just select this, and I can go Shift P or P if I want that to snap to the actual grid. And now I have all of these different stems, and this will essentially play back exactly as my song was in my other file. Now, my I/O setup is going to be whatever mine is, but they can very quickly reset the default on their end if they want to reset it to their own I/O. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring down the click quite a bit, maybe somewhere around -15, -16. We'll have a quick play. Bring in our click. Okay, so that all works for me. All right, so now that this is done, I'm just going to save this. And now the great thing here is if we open up our macro control tab and we go to the global, we can choose song folder, and it will open up a finder window with the song folder very, very quickly. If I take a look at this media folder, this is 51 megabytes versus 500 megabytes or, a gig. You can get pretty high up there in terms of your file size when you start sharing things on Dropbox. That can take up a lot of space. And if somebody only has a certain amount of space, then they're going to run out really, really quickly. So that's the main benefit here. And these files, if I select any one of these and show it in the Finder, you'll see that they're 96K, 16-bit, and this is a lossless compression format. And like I said, for me, especially if it's just for somebody tracking against the session that we're already working on, whether this is a songwriter or another producer, it is perfectly fine. I found that these results are 100% acceptable. I even did some tests to make sure that they respond to delay compensation. I exported waves and lined them up and had a look at things really, really, really super close. And I was able to see that everything is bang on as it should be. There's no surprises or anything like that. You get the benefit of really great quality with a really, really low file size. Now, one other thing I want to mention really, really quickly with respect to Dropbox. I haven't checked this out in Google Drive or any other cloud drives or anything like that. But one thing that I like to do is I like to go to File, Save New Version, and with incremental deselected, you want to make sure this says Save Current State as the incremental version and update document to this version. And this basically just saves a snapshot. Is I'm going to say Marcus starting point. And this is maybe the artist or producer made a mistake and they want to be able to go back to it. There'll be a version in there that they can go back to, which is essentially a blank slate. But one thing that I have noticed with Dropbox, you have to be aware of, is when you use Save New Version, make sure that you don't check incremental version. It does something funny where it makes it disappear on the other end, and it's easy for a song to actually disappear. So if I wanted to do something, I would actually use the file, and I would choose the Save As option and create a new song file. Now, the benefit here, like I said, is that I'm able to basically save the other artist, songwriter, producer, whoever, a lot of time because all of the markers, all of the arranger blocks, all of the chord track changes, they stay intact. Any tempo changes or time signature changes, if they did exist, they would come over. That import song data feature is a brilliant workflow. What ends up happening is, let's say that they lay down a couple tracks, maybe they do some recording. Now, once they've recorded all of their files, I will basically go back into my master session, and then I will go song, and I'll use the import song data, and I will navigate to this song, and I will bring in specifically these tracks, these ones that they've recorded, into my master session. The other cool thing is, if it's kind of like a work in progress, I can really quickly hop in, make sure that they're not working on the song, send them a quick text. I can open up the song and hear how things are going on their end, maybe do a little bit of pre-mixing or something to help them out. But this is the new workflow that I'm using in 2020. At the time that I'm doing this video, there's no native solution from PreSonus that allows us to collaborate in terms of any cloud services or anything like that. But for now, I have the ability to just simply use Dropbox and use the OGG Vorbis file format, and that gives me a really, really small size footprint with really decent quality. And then any recording that they're doing on their end, that is going to happen at whatever sample rate and resolution is set in the song setup. So if they record at 96, 24, then those files will be in here. The great thing is that this OGG Vorbis file format can sit natively in a Studio One timeline, and you don't have any caching of new files or anything like that, like you would, for example, with MP3s or something like that. Anyways, that's all the time I have available for today. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Any questions or comments, leave them down below. I'll do my absolute best to get back to you. And as always, we will catch you in the next video. Cheers.